Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. It's time for the Saturday live stream. Welcome, everybody. That's let's see. Normally here, we got Rogue, we got Brandon, Lee, producer Reef. A couple people here. Welcome, everybody. So today, I am giving away my NIOS 160 Quantum Skimmer. We need 25 people to enter the contest to give it away. So if you know anybody that's not on, go ahead and send them my way. We can enter them into the contest. So a couple things. We are at about 975 on our subscribers. So we are this close to 1,000 subscribers and giving away the Trident. I have a very special guest that's coming on when we give away the Trident, so I'm looking forward to it. So we just need 25 more people, and then we can give it away. So it's going to be a fun time when we give that away for sure. So today is going to be a interesting stream. We're going to talk about mistakes. Primarily, I want to talk about people buying fish that they shouldn't be buying. Some things that I'm noticing online that just make me cringe, and just talk about, some people that have had their mistakes over the years and how we rectify them to better the hobby. So we're going to get started. Could two Tridents work on one system? I guess you could. I don't see why not. Yeah, so let's see. We got about 14 people in the stream, so we need a lot more here to get this NIOS out. So let's get started with a couple things regarding fish. So I've been seeing some really interesting things online, and I just wanted to kind of vent a little bit. So for those of you that are on here that are new to the hobby, this will be more for you. But those that have been doing this for a very long time will find this to be just a refresher. But you have to think of your fish as pets. You have to think of them as, you would think a dog, essentially. If you're going to be successful in the hobby, you have to think of it like a dog. And I'm assuming most of you would not want to get a larger dog and feed your little dog to your larger dog. I would assume you wouldn't want to do that. So that's my first thing to discuss, and that is putting fish with other fish that obviously shouldn't be together and will just eat each other. I've seen this a lot, people getting angler fishes, not knowing, having a clue about them, buying lion fishes, not knowing what they're doing with them. You have to understand that these fish in the wild are going to eat whatever they can eat to survive. So, for instance, if you have a, let's just say 100-gallon tank, and you put in a lionfish, okay? You're like, oh, I want a lionfish, okay? So you put a lionfish in there, and you're like, you know what, cool, I want to get some chromis. I love chromis, so I want to put some chromis in there. Or anthias, I'd like to put some anthias in there. So I go out and buy, I don't know, let's just say they go out and buy a, I don't know, what are those, the sunburst anthias. They're like $300 fish. Put them in there, and then you go online and you type in, oh, I put my anthias with my lionfish and now it's gone. Oh, I wonder why. So the first comment that I want to make today is, don't put fish with other fish that are going to eat them. It's just, how stupid can you be? Like, don't do that. So if you're a new guy, know what you're buying. If you buy a fish, know that, if you're going to buy a bunch of anthias, don't put it with a lionfish. Don't put it with an anglerfish. Come on. Just don't do this stuff. Going for an SPS tank with super fine sand. Yeah, we could go over that. again, we're going to start with fish, so we'll go over that. But yeah, so I saw someone that bought an octopus on a recent thing. Don't buy an octopus, guys. I mean, save the octopus should be in the ocean. Don't buy an octopus. There's just certain things you got to be, bright and smart about. I've been seeing a lot of very stupid things, like someone has a 100-gallon tank and they buy a shark. Like, if you have a 100-gallon tank, don't buy a shark. A shark is not going to work in a 100-gallon tank, no matter what you think. It's going to start this big and then it's going to be 3 feet in about a year. Don't buy a shark. You guys got to be, you got to be very conscientious of what you're putting in your fish tank. And again, Macy's Daddy just mentioned, I think the most important thing to understand is that these fish, you have to consider them, if you want success, you have to consider them like dogs. You have to consider them like something that is going to be in your household and your family pet for 15, 20 years. Most fish are going to live, if you take care of them, they're going to live 15, 20 years easily. So, again, don't buy fish that are going to eat each other. Don't buy fish that are extremely hard to take care of, that need special needs. Don't buy a harlequin shrimp, for instance, because you think it's cool, and then feed it starfish. Like, just don't do that. It's I don't know how to explain it other than what I just said. Okay, so let's see. Sean, that was going to be kind of my next thing I want to talk about, which is corals. But let's see. Is it okay to buy a fish that will be big? Plan. See, that's a really interesting question. I've never bought a fish that I know is going to outgrow the tank, and I'll tell you why. For those that are out there that are really good at this, I congratulate you. But most of the time, getting fish out of fish tanks is very difficult. So don't put it in there in the first place. You want the fish, when you buy a fish, you want it to be the last home that you have for that fish. You don't want it to be transferred multiple times and stress out the fish. You don't want it to upgrade constantly. Unless you're upgrading your tank, the entire tank, and you're taking everything out of it and putting it in a new tank, I wouldn't recommend that. That's just my own opinion. Let's see. How do you introduce certain fish to your tank? Okay, so territorial fish is a whole other conversation. I wouldn't call that a mistake per chance. You never know what a fish is going to do. Even if, I've put fish together that everyone says you can't put together. I put a magnificent fox face with a yellow fox face, and it worked perfectly fine, and I didn't have any issues. But I have other people that tell me differently. Aaron just mentioned use an acclimation box. Perfect idea. I have a big, huge acclimation box that I put in my tank and have it sit there for a couple days. I mean, people say use it for a couple weeks, but I do it for a couple days. If my fish aren't attacking it, then release it and never had any issues. Wow, 6 fox faces. Nice. Yeah, boxfish and cowfish is another conversation. If you're going to get a cowfish or a boxfish, my recommendation is to buy a specific tank for it. Now, for those that don't know, cowfish, you get them at the store and they're this big, and cowfish get this big. So just be aware of that. Cowfish get gigantic, okay? Yes, a mirror works well too. That's another comment. That's perfect. Yep, using a acclimation box, absolutely. Yeah, fox faces are cool, man. I love my fox faces. So for those that have not seen my fish tanks, go ahead and look at my fish tanks. I have a lot of fish. I would say 90% of the fish in that tank I have had for plus 5 years. Never had a single issue with them. Never had ick, never had any diseases. They all get along. I have a very large Vilmingi tang. He's probably about yay big. I have a huge black trigger. I used to have a 3.5 foot eel, but unfortunately he passed away because he tried to eat another fish. So I learned my lesson there. But again, you have to make decisions that are going to not only provide your fish with a long, healthy life, but don't stress them out. The least stress you can give your fish, the more happy they're going to be, and the longer they're going to live. Can you show us a picture of your acclimation box? The acclimation box I have is from Ice Cap. It's a fish trap. It's called a Ice Cap fish trap, but it's basically an acclimation box. And that's what I use. So I see a lot of comments about fish aggression. So again, you really have to... Fish aggression is another conversation. It's not really a mistake. I want to really talk about just mistakes that people make. Like putting a shark in a 100-gallon tank, buying an eel for a 50-gallon tank, like stupid things like that I see all the time. And it's like, come on, guys, don't do that. Again, we're not going to really talk about fish aggression. That's a huge conversation. But I've had very good success with multiple tangs in a tank. I have 3 tangs in my 300. I have 3 tangs in my 100 too. I think that's a misnomer. I know a lot of people that have a lot of tangs in their tank. It just depends when you put them in your tank. If they're happy, like I said, if they have a lot of room to swim and they have a lot of places to hide, tangs are going to be really happy. But if you throw 3 hippo tangs in a 50-gallon tank, that's not going to work. They're going to get pissed. So, yes. So I have a UV sterilizer on my 300. I've had it since day one. So one thing about UV sterilizers, if you want to keep ick, for instance, out of the tank, you need to have that running from day one. You put that in, 6 months later, and ick was potentially introduced in the tank before that, there's a good chance it has already gotten into the rocks, into the sand, and it's just going to pop out. So yes, if you do a UV at the beginning stages of the build, before you even put water in there, that I think is the best solution for UV. And then of course you have to make sure the flow is accurate. There's an order when introducing fish. Again, John, I'm going to say yes and no. It depends on the fish. It depends. Every fish is different. You might hear 5 or 6 different clown triggerfish that are super aggressive, and then I've seen people with 4 or 5 clown triggerfish in a tank with no problem. So I do run UV 24 hours a day. Let's see. I'm setting up. How many yellow tangs can I have? Again, it's all relative to how much rock you have. There's a lot of relatives there, Jim. And not only that, but if you're going to have that many tangs, you're going to have to make sure that they're well fed. So having a lot of algae is good, having algae to prepare for them on a daily basis, and you'll have a very good success with tangs. I have a lot of algae that I feed my tangs, and that's what keeps them happy. Let's see. Okay, so again, that's fish doing stupid things. Don't buy a shark for a 100-gallon tank. Please don't do that. Don't buy an octopus. Just guys, I say this all the time to new reefers. You might go to a store, you might see something really cool. It's okay, you can buy it, but make sure you have prepared yourself for whatever it is and have the correct tank size, the correct food. Make sure you're very prepared to purchase whatever that is. Okay? So that's my spiel on buying stupid things. Alright, so next we're going to go over tank mistakes, some other things that I noticed. One of the things that I am also what's the word I'm looking for? The maker of mistakes, I guess, is putting your corals too close to each other. So there's a lot of people out there that will tell me something different. unfortunately, I've had really good success with this, which is putting corals next to each other. You're going to find that many people say don't put a specific coral next to another coral. I have also I have also seen tanks that have tons of corals just stacked on top of each other doing just fine. So I can tell you with absolute certainty there are corals that are more prone to be aggressive towards other types of corals. So you don't want to put them next to each other. I'll give you an example. I have a lobophilia, and that lobo likes to sting anything that gets next to it. I would say just be careful when you get a specific coral. Give it lots of space to grow. Depending on the coral, if it's an acro, for instance, it'll be really easy to cut. So I don't see the problem with putting acros real close to each other, because again, you can just cut them if they get close to each other. Collins, I would love people to actually comment on that. I can tell you that my lobophilias have been the most aggressive corals I've ever had. My lobophilias have killed probably, I would say, 6 or 7 corals since I've had them. So now I do not put anything near my lobos. I think I have about a 3-inch, at least a 3-inch gap from my lobos to anything else. So that's my opinion on that. Battle was talking about sharks. I do want to repeat what he said here. I have a 650 gallon and they all outgrew it. So again, don't get sharks unless you are prepared. Sharks, and I don't care what shark it is, it can be a cat shark, needs a, I would say no less than a 500 gallon tank, and it's got to have plenty of room on the sand, specifically with stingrays. If you ever want to get stingrays, they need tons of sand, so less rock. You have to build a specific tank for sharks and rays, so just be aware of that. You guys are saying Xenia, and you guys are talking about GSP. I wouldn't consider those aggressive. I would consider those just very fast growers and take over tanks. What I'm talking about when I talk about aggression, I'm talking about corals that sting others and kill them. Lobos are just, I don't know what it is about them. They just like to sting everything. Torches, yeah, torches like to sting stuff. Definitely rock nems. Don't put your rock nems near other things. Yeah, there you go. I appreciate Battle saying 1,000 gallon, because I think 1,000 gallon is a perfect size for a shark. And when we talk about gallons, we're actually not talking about amount of gallons. We're actually talking about size of the tank. And I want to rephrase, you can have a 1,000 gallon tank, but if it's a cylinder tank and it's, 5 feet and it's going all the way up to the ceiling, that's not going to work for sharks. You need something that is generally in an eclipse shape, or generally they call them racetrack tanks. No sharp edges with sharks. They hate to, they get stuck in the corners. Same thing with stingrays. You need to have a really good open area for them to swim. So anyway, J-Fusion, that's where my GSP is, on the back. So absolutely. Going into coral aggression, again, I see a lot of people out there just putting a coral right next to another coral. That's not that's not a good idea. So just be careful where you're putting corals. Someone had mentioned coral eating fish. That's another thing I see all the time. There's always this with caution method that people say with fish, but it comes down to the type of fish. If you buy a fish that only eats coral for a living, and that is what it does, don't buy it and put it in a fish tank with coral. I mean, simple, common sense stuff here. Charles, there's really no way to determine that. I mean, if you have an encrusting coral, it's going to go over the rocks. Like an encrusting Monty, generally is going to build on top of the rocks. But yeah, I don't really have a specific way of gauging that. How do you gauge acceptable fish stocking levels? Okay, that's a really good question. So we were kind of going over fish and putting the right fish into the tank. We also have to talk about sizing. There's this old adage, I would say, when I learned as a kid, maybe 20 years ago, and it was the fish is going to grow to the size of the tank. Now that's not 100% accurate. It depends on the fish. And I can tell you for sure that there are fish that are stunted, or their growth is stunted because they're in an aquarium, and that's a well-known fact. But there are other fish that are not stunted, and I will tell you some of them. For instance, sharks. Sharks are not going to get stunted by the size of the tank. Okay, they're going to grow to their relatively large size no matter what tank you put them in. Same thing with eels. Eels are going to grow to 3-4 feet long, even if you put them in a 50-gallon tank. So eels are another one. Most of the time, angelfish will be stunted when they're in an aquarium. So I've seen angelfish that generally will grow in the wild to 1.5 to 2 feet, and in an aquarium they barely get to about 7-6 inches. So that is partially true. I've seen that before. But to answer your question, how do you figure out your stocking? It's really tough because you have to figure out how much rock work you have, how much, where you're going to put how many fish you're going to put in there based on how much rock work you have. Do they have enough swimming room? So tangs are a perfect example. You guys have said about tangs. You got to think about it like that. You got to think about how much swimming room does that fish need. So I'll give you an example. I have a goby, a little tiny goby, in this 7-gallon tank right next to me. Okay, and that little tiny goby is about 4 inches. So he's not really tiny, but you know what? He doesn't swim. He stays right in that corner all day long, and he's happy. So to answer, I don't know who asked that question. I don't think there's a way to stock fish based on size, whereas I think it's how much swimming room does the fish need to be happy, and also how much space do they have to hide or be comfortable in the tank. So I've seen tanks with 50 fish in a small little tank, and I look at that and go, are you guys stupid? Like, you got all these anthias and chromis and tangs and swimmers, and they have nowhere to hide. They have nowhere to go. I see tanks with a little tiny rock in the middle, and all the fish are swimming around. They have nowhere to hide. And that stresses them out and leaves them vulnerable to diseases, leaves them vulnerable to being unhappy. So that's really important. Okay. Let's see, some other question. What causes them to stunt? I don't know. I think it's just that they're boxed in. I think that they don't have all that swimming room. So maybe there's something in their genealogy that makes them just not grow. I don't really know. That's something I'd like to find out. Let's try a dolphin. Let's see, mine are all chill, about 30. What's the worst mistake that you've ever made for your tank? Yeah, we're going to go over that. That's something that I'm going to talk about in the end, Philly, actually, I'm going to tell you that is a misnomer too. Now, let me explain why, and I think people are going to argue with me. Wrasses like to sleep in sand, okay? However, they do not need sand to survive. I've had many wrasses over the years that are perfectly happy just laying down in a rock underneath somewhere. So I think that's a misnomer. I will tell you with experience, wrasses do like sand, but they don't have to have sand to survive. So I don't know if that would be considered a mistake. I would say if you're going to design a tank and you're going to get a wrasse, make sure that if you are getting sand, that it is fine and not thick, because it will hurt them. So to answer kind of the question, I would say yes, buy sand. If you're going to get a wrasse, buy the correct sand. what food can you use to supplement my lawnmower blending? Very easy, Brian. Nori, any type of algae will be good. Oh, there goes the camera. So, yeah, you can get those nori sheets. Sea Veggies is really great by Two Little Fishies, and you can get sea veggie clips, and they'll eat all that. Trust me. Brian asked, what kind of wrasse do you recommend? Oh, there's so many wrasses, man. Reefing with O just mentioned leopard wrasse, Cory wrasses. Yeah, those are really cool wrasses. I have a Cory wrasse. He's really cool. So yeah. If you do buy a wrasse, make sure that you have a tight lid. Make sure you have a lid that cannot be penetrated by the fish, because they will jump out and hit the lid. I've seen it happen many times. So make sure whatever you're doing with wrasses that you're keeping that lid nice and tight. Same thing with eels. Yeah, that's not true. I don't know why people say that. There's a lot of wrasses that don't even bury in the sand, you know. But Battle just brought up a good point. Wrasses love to lay in the sand and fall asleep. If you have any fish, specifically eels or sharks, anything that's going to eat something that is on the ground that thinks it's dead, do not put a wrasse in your tank. I mean, these are very common sense things, you know. Let's see. So mistakes with corals, we kind of went over a little bit. Just don't put them close together. I've seen that way too many times. My biggest, yeah, you know, someone had mentioned all tanks should have lids. I'm going to disagree a little bit. If your tank is going to have, let's say, seahorses, you don't need a lid. You know, some people like not having a lid, some people don't. It just depends on what you have. Like, I have a lid on all my tanks, but I have fish that are jumpers. I have fish that are, you know, one time I found my black trigger, he's this big, sitting on top of my tank. He had jumped through the lid and landed on the tank, and I had to save him. It was crazy. Let's see. Sometimes, Sean, I'm not going to really go into compatibility. Unfortunately, that's such a big topic. There's so many fish, you know. You can never use too much gear. I'm going to go over that a little bit, though. Let's see. So, okay. So some of the mistakes that I want to mention are regarding automation and gear, which Lucas just mentioned. In terms of, I will tell you what I see a lot of is over-nutrient control. So one of the biggest things I see new reefers doing nowadays is buying a biopellet reactor, then buying a Cato reactor, then buying a refugium, all for one tank. I think some of the dumbest things I see online are people doing stuff like that. They're putting tons of gear to control nutrients. You only need one nutrient control device. You don't need 5. Just like I don't potentially agree with some of the people that use a calcium reactor and dosing. I think there's a need for it sometimes, but if you have a properly tuned calcium reactor and properly sized calcium reactor, there should be no reason why you need to dose. And the same thing, vice versa. There's no reason why you should be dosing and think about, oh, I need a calcium reactor, you know. Let's see. Let me see if there's some other questions. Big mistake, not realizing how much the hobby's going to cost. Yeah. Where's Desert Reefer? I don't know where he is today, unfortunately. I don't follow where he is, and I really don't care where he is. It's nice that he's not here, because all the mistakes that I'm talking about, he has done. So every single one I'm talking about, he has done that. So, sulfur nitrate reactors are awesome. If you set them up correct and you read a lot, you research them and how to get them going, they do a fantastic job in controlling your nitrates. I used to have one and I really loved it. Let's see. Okay, so what were we talking about? Gear. So here's another thing. You want to simplify your system as much as possible. You don't want to overcomplicate the system with devices. Now you'll say, well, wait a second, Derek, you have 1,000 things. Well, if you look at my tanks, you will notice that anything that touches water is quite easy, or it's how do I explain it? I have a lot of stuff, but anything that's actually contributing to touching water is very minimal. I have an algae turf scrubber, I have a skimmer, and a fleece roller in my reef tank. That's it. Everything else is electrical, doing something else, like controlling model water changes, or doing electrical things, lights. Yeah, redundancy, perfect, exactly. Redundancies for leaking, flow sensors. Nothing that is actually contributing to the water quality. But when you start to add a bunch of stuff, like someone had mentioned Kalkwasser, I think Kalkwasser is a fantastic form of calcium and bicarbonate control, but I will tell you that if you don't know what you're doing, you can crash your tank very easily with it. So for newer reefers, I would highly recommend that you don't do Kalkwasser. Start with some dosing, two-part dosing. Two-part dosing is usually very difficult to overdose unless you don't know what the hell you're doing. Fleece rollers are awesome, Collins. I have 2 of them. I love them. Greatest thing I ever bought for my tank, without a doubt. So, Kalkwasser is a big deal. I see that a lot. Overfeeding is not really a mistake, and I'm going to explain this to you too. So, a lot of new reefers, and I've seen this a lot on forums, and Ryan at Bulk Reef Supply comments on this quite a bit. If you're overfeeding your tank, you have to make sure you have gear to keep up with the overfeeding. So what I'm getting at is I don't see a problem with overfeeding your tank as long as you have the gear to back it up. I think fish and corals love overfeeding. I think corals actually succeed better when they have tons of nutrients in the tank. Fish eating 3 times a day is pretty normal in a tank. I feed my fish twice a day. Again, as long as you have a good nutrient export device, feed to your heart's content. I really believe that. But my opinion again on feeding is fish need to eat, corals need to eat. Just throw a bunch of crap in there, let them eat, have a good time. They'll be healthier. If you give them all different types of food, that's even better. Corals need all that too. So, yeah, definitely. Candyman, I bought a GHL. We're not talking about GHL today, but thank you. I appreciate you watching the videos for sure. They're going to get a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Opinionated coming. I already did 3 more videos and they're coming pretty soon. Yes, Candyman said I feed heavy. Absolutely, guys. Again, only feed heavy if your tank can support it. So that's my advice on feeding. I don't think it's a mistake, and I think it's a misnomer that they go around telling people, new reefers, to don't feed heavy. I don't believe in that. That's just my opinion. And if you talk to many different advanced hobbyists, they're going to tell you the same thing. They're going to say feeding is important. It's so important because you need to get those nutrients into the tank. If you don't put nutrients in the tank, you can't do the cycle. So if your fish, yes, your fish pooping will contribute to the cycle, but if they're not eating, they're not pooping. So the biological cycle in your tank can't continue to go if you're not feeding enough in the tank. I'm going to actually disagree with you, Charles, and let me tell you why. So and I want some people to comment on this. I have had many different corals in many different pars. Now, I will tell you that one coral, maybe mushrooms, does not like a lot of light. But I have zoas in here, I have zoas in my other tank, and they're getting hit with like 300 power, and they are super happy. So I don't know if that's exactly true, Charles. I think what you're saying is putting specific corals in specific pars. I'd like people to kind of disagree with me if you disagree with me, but I know a lot of corals, as long as you acclimate them properly. If you put a zoa in, for instance, and you put it at a lower light level and then slowly acclimate it to a higher light level, it's going to be perfectly fine. I don't know. I think it's fine, you know, putting corals in bright light if they can handle it. Let's see. Do you think it's a mistake to run lights during the first months of the tank? That's a really good question, Lucas. As long as you're dosing ammonia or getting some type of ammonia in there, I would actually recommend not running your lights, because you're going to get a lot of algae blooms during the first period. That's kind of a newer thing that I've seen people doing for newer tanks. I would have to say, yeah, don't run your lights. I agree with that. Yeah, so Aaron brought up a good point. Yes, the difference between 200 and 500, yes, knowing your par as a general sense is important. But buying a coral for a specific par, I'm going to say is not that big of a deal. So, yes, knowing your tank's average par, let's say, or knowing your hot spots, yes, I agree. But knowing... hey, I'm going to put my zoa here, I'm going to put my lobo here, I'm going to put it, because I don't know if that's such a big deal. I mean, if you guys have seen my mixed reef, I have them all in different pars. I really don't care. Yeah, I have my acros at the top because I want them to get the most par, but the rest of my corals, I just throw them in there and hope for the best. No, Charles, I have a par meter, and I did a complete par of my tank, and before I started putting corals in. But again, I made sure that my par didn't reach a specific amount. Like I made sure that nothing in my water was like 400 par, which would indicate that everything will be below 400, and therefore most of my corals will survive. So yeah, my eye can't tell the difference either. My little 7-gallon nano, I put a par meter in there, and I looked at the top of the tank, and the top of the tank was like 300. So I was like, oh, well, I can just put about anything in here, you know? And that's kind of how I gauge it. I gauge it at what's the most par, and then I know that I can put in acros at the top because I'll have enough par there. And then I know that I'm going to be able to put all my rest of my corals underneath that, and they're not going to get blasted. But I can tell you guys, I don't know how many of you guys are newer, but mixed reefs are really tough. You got to have, you know, pretty much perfect water quality to maintain both your SPS and your LPS and your mushrooms and everything all at once. But yeah, I have a mixed reef, and I love it. I love having a mixed reef. Yeah, Charles, that's 100% a mistake. I'm glad you mentioned that. And that is thinking that you have to take your lights and blast them. Huge mistake, you're right. Let's see. So let's talk about a little bit of another mistake I noticed, and that is putting your heater next to your temperature probe. I don't know how many times I've seen this. So if you have a heater, make sure it's in a compartment of your reef that your temperature probe is not in. Most of the time, I recommend, if you can, put your temperature probe in an overflow box, because that'll give you a really good indication of what the temperature actually is in your tank. So I see that all the time. Don't put your pH probes next to your dosing. You know, that's just a stupid mistake. I see that all the time too. Someone puts your pH probe right next to your dosing, which has high pH, and then you get these huge waves of spikes, and you're like, why is my pH going like this? Well, because you're dosing right next to your pH probe. Let's see. Mistake is not doing occasional ICP tests. Yeah, I like doing ICP tests. You know, Aaron, I do them all the time. They're expensive, but I love doing it. It's kind of cool to know what's in your fish tank. So yeah, heater, I see that all the time. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you guys come up with some other mistakes, definitely. Using poor quality plumbing, absolutely. Brian, I think the two sensors actually meant so you could put one in the tank and one in your sump. So I would say no. Yep, not doing redundant heater controls, absolutely, is another one. So, yeah, I mean, if you could put all your probes in the overflow and it's not intrusive and it doesn't get algae on it and it doesn't get a lot of bubbles, absolutely. I think it's underrated. People should be putting probes in overflows if they can. You know, because that's basically your water. That's where your water is. So I have my temperature probe in my overflow, and then I have my salt, my salinity probes in my return chamber, because I think that's the best place for them. Well, J Fusion, I think Candyman would disagree with you, but yeah, having a controller is important. Absolutely. So I've been seeing this a lot online, and I want to go over this now that Charles mentioned contaminated salt. There's a huge thing going around that I want to discuss, and I've seen this a few times. So here's the thing with salt, and I think everyone will agree with me that's a little more advanced that's in the stream today. You buy salt based on what you're trying to accomplish in your tank. So for instance, I'm going to buy a salt that's going to keep my tank at the levels that I'm trying to maintain. I find that specific salts are better for people that are storing salt water. I find that specific salts can sometimes not work as well if they're not heated. There are also salts out there that are really good, but they're not good at storing. So you need to buy the salt based on what's the best for your tank. I've been seeing a lot of people out there just buying tons of different salts and trying them, and be like, I like this salt, and I like this salt, and I like this salt. And they keep trying all these different salts. Stick with one salt that's right for your tank. That's the best advice I can give you about salt. That's right. Lucas just said exactly what I just said. So I use Tropic Marin Pro. The reason I use Tropic Marin Pro is because it's really good at storing. And I store 60 gallons of salt water. That's the only reason why I use Tropic Marin Pro. It does match my parameters also. But when I first started doing it, I had to get my tank to those parameters. Yeah. So I wanted to mention, I just saw the Streamlabs came up. My Nios is used that I'm giving away. It's my own personal skimmer. It's pretty dirty, so whoever wins it's going to have a good cleaning. I'm going to try to clean it as best I can, but whoever wins it's getting it for free. So too bad, I guess, that it's dirty, but it works just fine. Believing people on Facebook for advice. Oh boy. Can I tell you guys something? So, for those that don't know me personally, but don't know me, I don't belong to a lot of groups. I have my group, of course, that I started, and I started the group to, let's say, wean out the people online that are giving bad advice. I started my entire Facebook group to teach people about automation and teach people about things that maybe they don't see very often that they can do. I started the YouTube channel also to give you advice, of course. But you will notice in my group, I'm not going to allow just people coming in there and being trolls, people coming in there and being rude and mean, and people coming into the group and doing things that are inappropriate or telling people things that are completely just wrong. I'm going to delete those comments right away. Macy, Daddy, what's the name of your Facebook group? Come on, man. I hope you're just saying that so I say it. So anyway, I don't belong to a lot of groups. I got off of AskBRS. I got off of Neptune's group. I don't like the groups on Facebook, unfortunately. You know, some of it I do. It depends. So, you know, I love my group, of course, because I keep all the nonsense out of it. I always make sure I check everything on the groups. By the way, I check every single thread. I'm very what's the word I'm looking for? Active. I'm very active on my Facebook group. I want it to be a great Facebook group along with this YouTube channel. So I don't want people to, you know, be saying, you know, stupid things and being rude to people, and I just don't like that stuff. Who decides what's wrong or right? Me. Macy's Daddy Derek's playground. Don't get it from all the same place. Yeah, I don't talk to anybody at the local fish stores anymore. Let's see. I'm just reading some stuff, guys. Why don't you like BRS TV or Neptune? It's not that I don't like it. It's that there's just so much misinformation on those groups, guys. Unfortunately, there's just so much misinformation, and unfortunately, I can't. I just don't want to. I want to help where I can, but there's all this fighting and bickering and crybabies and whiners, and I don't want that in my group. So I just don't belong to them. Well, Collins, you are 100% reached the right place. I have tons and tons of tutorials on Apex, and most of my streams we talk about Apex. This just happens to be a stream where we're talking about other things, but yeah. Alright, what is this guy? Are you the new Desert Reefer? Do you think a 90-gallon Planet Aquarium is a good starter? I'm not familiar with Planet Aquariums. I'd have to take a look at that. But yeah, I think a 90-gallon is a good starter tank. I will kind of say, and I think people would agree with me, you don't want to do a nano as your first tank. I think a smaller tank is actually more difficult than a larger tank. So I think like a 100-gallon tank is actually a good size to start. Absolutely. Oh, I've been Lucas, man. I don't know if anybody's here from Arizona, but holy cow. I'm not going to name anything, but I've been to local fish stores and they tell me some of the dumbest shit. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like I don't go to local fish stores anymore. I can't deal with it. Let's see. Just taking a look at a couple things here. So if some of you guys came in a little late, we have a very special guest coming on to give away the Trident. So I think next week we're going to be giving away the Trident. We have to give or get up to 1,000 subs. I think we're going to be able to get that here this week. I think we only need like 25 more people. So I think next week we're going to be giving away the Trident. So I really want to spread the word, and I haven't quite decided, but I think we're going to do like 75 entrants to give away the Trident. So we're going to need 75 people on the stream. Today I think we maxed out about 35, 40. Generally it's a 50-person giveaway, but I think we're going to do a 75 because it's a Trident. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to do that. Brian, it's just like every other one. We're going to have a stream, and you're going to enter during the stream. Thank you very much, Candyman. I appreciate it. I've seen you commenting on my GHL stuff. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I want people to understand out there, I'm not a fanboy of Apex and I'm not a fanboy of GHL. I'm doing a comparison between the two, and I'm seeing a lot of differences between them. So that's all I'm doing right now. Let's see, workout of town next Saturday. Well, Mark, man, you gotta try to get on. Hey, I don't know if we're gonna have 1,000 subs by next weekend. I think we are with the current trend. I think we will. But we have a really special guest coming on for our 1,000 sub episode. So I want to get a ton of people in here. Yeah, that's right. I've been having to wean out the GHL trolls. I've noticed that people that love GHL are a lot more whiny than people that love Apex. I'm noticing that a lot. Well, I don't know if you guys know, last week I was a little under the weather, so last week's stream was kind of not so great, but I wasn't feeling so good, and I almost canceled it, but, you know. That's a really good question, Producer Reef. I'm going to answer it with, it depends what the uncontrollable algae is, because most algae is not uncontrollable if you know what you're doing. Ick, absolutely not. You should not have to restart your tank. I had ick in my tank. You remove the fish, you put them in quarantine for 2 months, and your tank is gone. No ick. So, kind of new here. When is next week's live show? Jim, my live shows are every single Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But of course, you know, with the time change, it's always going to... Arizona doesn't change their time, so once the time change, it'll be different, but it's right now 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Pacific. They're just as whiny, just more Apex users. I think... Okay, let me rephrase that. I've noticed that ever since I started doing the GHL versus Apex series, I get more GHL fanboys upset with me than Apex fanboys upset with me. I don't know if that makes sense. So I have to kind of just, you know, weave in and out of their comments and just be like, listen, I got both of them set up here, and this is what this does, and this is what this does. If you tell me that they're doing something wrong, that's another story, but this does this, and this does this. There's nothing more to it. Yeah, we have our own time zone. It's a little strange. We don't have daylight savings. Yeah, so my Facebook page is at the bottom of all of my videos, and that's ReefAutomation. Is it risky to have a 50-gallon RODA hooked up to an APTO? Absolutely not. That's what I have. As long as you have a really good pump, I wouldn't be too worried about that. As long as you program everything correct so that if the pump's been on for a period of time that it shuts off, then... Charles, that never worked for me. I know a lot of people it does. It depends on your location. Here in Arizona, we don't have a lot of CO2, oxygen to get into the tank from the outside. It doesn't work here in Arizona. But I have a CO2 scrubber, works like magic. Good flow valve, yeah, redundant safety for, yeah, redundance, 100% redundance on that. That's what I have. If you guys have seen my videos, I have tons of redundancies. Yeah, CO2 scrubbers work perfectly. I have not looked at the Hydros yet, Lou. Everyone knows on the stream that I don't like CoralView products. I've had a lot of problems with their products over the years, so I'm not really interested in getting it. But who knows? I bought a GHL and I had no interest in it. So my guess is your final GHL opinion will be, you're going to find out soon, because I am actually doing I'm actually doing a video where I'm going to do a 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5 stars on different subjects of each part of each device. And then I'm going to tally up all the stars. So I'm going to tell you that my opinion is not necessarily going to be my opinion on one specific thing. It's going to be my opinion on a number of different things. And then I'm going to tally up the total to basically who the winner is. You know? My scrubber is really easy, Charles. I don't know if I have shown anyone my scrubber video, but I just have a scrubber, and then it goes into my skimmer input. Wave engine, I've heard, is really good, yeah. Someone had asked what my new skimmer is. I have a Royal exclusive skimmer now. I got rid of that Nios and put a Royal exclusive in. Mistakes with power heads. Let's see. Not cleaning them. That's a big mistake. I clean my power heads once a month. I have MP40s, so what I did, and I'm sure most of you guys have done this, is if you have MP40s, you just go out and buy new wet sides, and I take the wet sides out, I clean them, and then while they're being cleaned, I have the new ones in, and it's really easy. Do you recirculate your skimmer? I do not. Scrubber. It does not work. At least it did not work for me. I'm changing media about once a month. Yes, QTing is extremely important. I recommend everyone does it. However, I'm going to mention one thing. I said this last week, or I probably said it the following week. I buy all of my fish from one place. I buy all of my coral from one place. So, as long as my belief is this: if you buy all your fish from the same place and nowhere else, and you know for a fact that they're QTing and doing everything they can to make sure their fish are healthy, I can tell you with absolute certainty there's a good chance you're not going to get any ick or anything in your tank. Same thing with corals. If you're buying the same place every time, there's a good chance you're not going to get algae or bubble algae or things that will happen if you buy it from multiple places. So for those that don't know, I buy all my fish from one place, and I buy all my coral from one place. And since I've been doing that for 5-6 years, I haven't had any issues. So I only QT if my fish is sick, which doesn't happen very often, or of course if I was stupidly to buy something from somewhere else. Yeah, John, for gyres, absolutely buy extra cages and impellers. Those things get dirty like in 2 seconds. Just considering it's expensive. Yeah, I don't know much about the wave engine other than it's very similar to that of the Neptune waves and their power and how they work. Name some names, please. What do you want to know, Charles? Where I buy my stuff from? Because I mentioned it last week or the week before. My skimmer cups are 100% not open to outside air. I have skimmer cleaners, and they're very tight. The recirculating, I've never seen a need because my pH is about 8.2 to 8.3 with the scrubber coming from the outside air, and it works fine, so I've never thought about it. I tried recirculating and it didn't work for me. It might be just Arizona, the air here. I don't really know because I tried from outside air, it didn't work. So Charles, I buy all of my fish from Diver's Den on Live Aquaria. I've been doing that for 8 years, 9 years. I don't think I've ever bought a fish from anywhere else in the last 5 years. I used to buy it from a local fish store. Every fish I ever bought from them had a problem, so I don't do that anymore. I buy all of my corals from Top Shelf Aquatics, and I have in the past bought my corals from other places, and every time I bought a coral from somewhere else, I've had something, like I had a bubble algae just pop up all of a sudden, and it was right from the coral I got from a different place. So no more of that. Yeah, Aaron taught me basically how to do my fallow period, because I had ick in my reef tank because I bought one fish that wasn't from Diver's Den and had ick. So no more of that. Not saying they're perfect by any means, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, every fish I've ever got from them, I still have. The only fish that I don't have are the ones that were eaten by another fish, or something silly happened, it jumped out of the tank or something ridiculous. Okay, we're at about an hour, so we're gonna close up shop here. I appreciate everyone coming today. Hopefully you learned a couple things. I just wanted to vent these dumb things I'm seeing online, like just absolutely stupid crap. And I love to just teach people, but also call people out on stupidity. Let's see. So we're giving away a Nidos Quantum 160. It's sitting in my garage. I need to clean it. It's just sitting there. It's used. I'm not going to send pictures of it. It comes with everything. It works perfectly fine. It's free, so no complaining. If you are outside the United States, you will have to pay for shipping. Inside the United States, I ship out UPS ground. I'll probably clean it tomorrow or the next day. I don't know. Pretty busy lately. Appreciate everyone coming today. Please tell your friends, tell all your anybody that's into reefing. If you go to the local fish store, spread the word about our channel. Next week we're giving away a Trident, and I'm basing that on us hitting 1,000 subs, which I think we're going to do this week. I'm really excited to do that. Yeah, and we got a really cool guest coming on for that, so I'm really excited to show you who's coming on. Yeah, so oh, Charles, absolutely, man. If you want to donate something for a giveaway, that would help me, absolutely. So okay, so let's pick a winner. We had 31 enter today, and again, you have to be here to win. So whoever the winner is has to be here. All right, look at that, new guy in, new winner. So our winner today is Mr. Mark Waller. I saw him a couple times. He asked a bunch of questions, but you still have to be here. So Mark, are you still here? And if you are, go ahead and say hello. Sweet. Well, Mark, congratulations, buddy, on the win. Go ahead and PM me on Facebook. If you don't know my name, it's Derek Picker. I am the admin of our Facebook group, so you should be able to find me easy. I'm going to type it in the chat for you. So Facebook me, we'll get you your shipping information. We'll get that sent out to you. So awesome, man. Never know who's going to win, you know. We get people in here that say they never win, and they come in and they win. So never know who's going to win. Right. Any other questions before we go, guys? Last chance. Ask me anything. And again, you'll have a chance to win a Trident next week. So I'm excited. Aaron, thank you for helping out. I appreciate it. A lot of questions today that I didn't get to, so try to get to all your questions. You know, sometimes it's really hard. Let's see. Oh, I got a thumbs down. Awesome. It's fun. I get thumbs downs on my video. Like, it's usually just one person. Like, someone doesn't like me. I don't know who it is, but someone doesn't like me. I don't really care. I wish you would tell me who's doing these thumbs down, because I would go at them. Like, why are you thumbs downing me, man? I'm trying to be nice. Anyway, okay. Peace, guys. Thank you for watching. Give a thumbs up to the video to counter that stupid thumbs down that person gave me. So hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and next week's going to be a good one. So look forward to doing that, and we have a very special guest on. So peace.